Today's May 25th, and today's quote is entitled, "We see through colored glasses." We don't see things as they are, we see things as we are. And other writers have said this in various ways, explaining that the world is subjective. And it's such an interesting phenomenon because so often we see things and we're completely convinced this is the way it is, but we're seeing it through the subjective view of our own colored glasses. This is the way we see the world. This is the experience we have in the world up to this point. This is the knowledge we have. So you put that all together, and then we're seeing something which seems very clear to us. So it's always useful to at least consider that everything we see may not actually be the way it is. It may just be the way we see it. And there's a funny saying, I don't know if I've told you this before, but perhaps we have. Nothing means anything until you show up. And 10 people show up at the same site of an incident, and they have 10 different stories about what happened. So each is seeing it through their own subjective view. Quite interesting, right? And I think maybe you've heard about this. In law, you have this problem that people see the same thing, but they don't see this. They don't come up with the same story. And also the stories change over time. So it's just good to keep it. It's useful to keep in mind that even when we're studying Shastra, although Shastra is absolute, we may not be absolute, and therefore, because we're not absolute, we may not see Shastra objectively, even though we might think we're being objective. I don't know if you've noticed this, but oftentimes if you've seen devotees discuss philosophy or been privileged to be in any debate, oftentimes what devotees are debating very much reflects their worldview and their own psychology. It's how they see the world, either in a black and white way, or a very conservative way, or a very liberal way, because that's their nature. They're very open, or they're very closed, or they're very black and white. And some people have that nature. It's just the way they were born. They're black and white, and they actually cannot see things gray. The mind, it's not their nature. They can't. So if you're discussing philosophy, they're going to see it either this way or that way, and there's no gray area. Somebody by nature may be very liberal, so when they're discussing philosophy, they may look at it from very different angles of vision than you do, and looking at it through new possibilities and new lenses. And you may be very conservative, so your understanding is just, this is what it says here, this is just how it is. How can you look at it any other way? So it's interesting to consider, when I'm thinking that I'm being objective about Krishna consciousness, how objective am I being? And am I just really subjectively looking at things and subjectively understanding them? Now, it may be true that I am subjectively looking at it. And that's okay, because we're subjective. So it's natural you're going to look at it that way. But it also, you can hear the views of other people and consider those. And at least be aware that when I'm understanding something, it may be just my subjective view. And try to be more objective about it. Try to look at other points of view, other positions, other angles of vision, and broaden your vision to be more actually objective. So one scholar, he called this naive realism. He said it was naive to think that we're actually we're looking at something objectively. And I think we can see this clearly in that quite often different devotees will view the same teachings, same thing Prabhupada said, in different ways, through subjective lenses, which they all may be correct at the same time. I'm not saying one is necessarily right or wrong. They could all be right. But we tend to look that way, so at least we can be open to other perspectives, seeing things in other ways. Often I've suggested being open even to things you don't agree with, just because it gives you a different perspective. And I think a lot of times we're attached to seeing things in a certain way. for no other reason than we're attached to seeing it this way, because this is the way we think it should be, and therefore this is the way it's going to be for me. What maybe we're not understanding actually how it is, because we're reluctant to be open to another view, which I don't think is always bad, but sometimes is bad. I mean, sometimes you have to stick to your view, because you've studied something, you've come to the Siddhanta, you've understood it, this is the way Prabhupada has explained it. It's clear, it's not subjective at all, it's objective, this is what it is. And you want to maintain that. But sometimes you might think it's like that, and it's not. And so at least be open to that possibility. Hare Krishna.